watching Prophecy in the Spotlight tonight, and we are very glad to have you all with us. I'm going to try to get this in and see if that'll pick up there. I think it will. And figured out the problem, I believe, and everything's working fine now. And so I'm going to talk tonight about what I wanted to bring the other night. Tomorrow night, I've got I'm going to talk about the three wise men, as we call them. And of course, it doesn't say there were three. There were three gifts that they brought. But we're going to talk about the wise men tomorrow. I got something interesting to share with you about them. A little bit of a taste of Christmas, I guess. And although they come about a year and a half later. But anyway, okay, I hope that you're doing well. It is Sunday night. It is late. It is Sunday the 21st. This will be the shortest day of the year, right? This is the winter solstice. Okay, Sunday, December 21st, 9:47 p.m., 10:47 for you folks on the East Coast, and I'll be as brief as I can tonight. And I know it's late. And I want to talk about the Jews, specifically how to save the Jews. The Jews are being killed. Nothing new about it, only it just seems like it's very accelerated in our recent times here. They're being shot. Let's see, a college recently, some other places, and then of course Australia, big shooting in Australia. I'm sure all of you know about that and have seen some things about that. I want to give a biblical truth here, a biblical way to save the Jews from being murdered and killed. Did you know the Bible has something to say about this? The Bible has a lot to say about a lot of things, by the way. And if we'd live by the word of God, and if our governments would quit bucking against Scripture and read it and try to pattern the nation after it and our laws, we'd be a lot better off. But I want to take you to the book of Esther. And in the book of Esther, there's something very interesting. Of course, I bring out in my Genesis book, recently out, that the book of Esther is the first usage of the word Jew. And in fact, in chapter 8, we're going to see that many people became Jews in Esther chapter 8. These were people who were not Hebrews. These were people that were Gentiles, and they became Jews. Okay, so you cannot become a Hebrew because a Hebrew is a race. You're born into that race, but you can choose to become a Jew. Okay, now I don't recommend you do that now. So, and you'll see that what I just said. You'll see that down there in. I'm gonna find my flashlight. Here it is. You'll find that in chapter 8 of Esther, down the end of the verse there, chapter 17. And many of the people of the land became Jews, for the fear of the Jews fell upon them. Now, to help you understand what I'm saying here about how to save the Jews, and what's the book of Esther got to do with it? A lot. Do you remember a guy named Haman? He hated Mordecai. He hated him. I mean, every time he saw him, Mordecai wouldn't bow down to him, and he just couldn't handle it. Very upset he was that a Jew would withstand him, and but he hated the Jews, and he came up with a plan to kill all the Jews. Wow, huh? A regular Hitler. This is before Hitler's time, obviously, and this is about 500 years before the time of Christ, and so they Haman came up with a plan. he built a gallows to hang Mordecai on, but he also had tricked the king into signing a decree, the decree of the law of the Medes and the Persians, to have a date. And I think it was the 13th of Adar, something like that. And but anyway, a future date that all the people of the land had a right to kill a Jew and take their property. So it was going to be a slaughter. And but in the meantime, he had it all. He was second in command to the king. He had everything, but there was one man that wouldn't bow down to him. So Haman devised another plan to have Mordecai killed on the gallows. Well, it's come to find out, Queen Esther is a Jew, and she has a special meeting and a dinner with the king, and she tells the king what Haman has planned. Remember, Haman, the king goes out. He's frustrated. He's upset. He comes back in and he sees Haman kneeling down next to the queen. He's pleading for his life, but the king misunderstood it. Will he have his way with the queen? And they put a sack over his head and they took him out and they hung him on the gallows he prepared for Mordecai. Now God's hand is in all of this. And so Mordecai later on meets with the king, tells him that there's a law that's been passed, that all the kingdom, everyone's going to rise up or is allowed to rise up and kill the Jews, take their property. Well, the king said, "Well, it's the law. It's been signed. I shouldn't have done it. I signed it. I didn't know what it was. It's the law of the Medes and the Persians, and it cannot be undone." So that's a predicament. They're in a predicament, aren't they? The law is passed. The date is set. The Jews are going to die. What do we do? Here's what he did. He got with Mordecai, made him second in command, gave him his ring. He said, "You write a law where the Jews on that day can rise up and defend themselves, take up arms, and kill their enemies and take their property." So they couldn't undo the law, but they could write a new law that gave the Jews a way to protect themselves. You see where I'm headed here? Let me read you a couple of verses here. I'm in Esther chapter 8. Let's start in let's look in verse 8, write ye also for the Jews as it liketh you. This is the king telling Mordecai, you write it. You write what needs to be written, and you've got the ring, and authorize this in the king's name, and seal it with the king's ring. For the writing which is written in the king's name and sealed with the king's ring may no man reverse. That's the law of the Medes and the Persians, and cannot be overturned. And so he writes the law, and verse 10, and he wrote in the king's name and sealed it with the king's ring, sent letters by post on horsebacks and riders on mules, camels, and young dromedaries, wherein the king granted the Jews. Listen to this, verse 11. The king granted the Jews which were in every city to gather themselves together and to stand for their life, to destroy, to slay, and to cause to perish all the power of the people and province that would assault them, both little ones and women, and to take the spoil of them for prey upon one day in all the provinces of the king, namely upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Dar. The copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people, and that the Jews should be ready against that day to avenge themselves. Now let's look down. Let's look in chapter 9 real quickly. In verse 1, now in the 12th month, that is the month of Dar, on the 13th day of the same, when the king's commandment and his decree drew near. Now there's two commandments. There's the commandment that allows the people in the kingdom to kill Jews, and take their property. But there's another command that the Jews can rise up, defend themselves, and take their property. Okay? And the decree drew near to be put in execution in the day that the enemies of the Jews hoped to have power over them, though it was turned to the contrary, that the Jews had rule over them that hated them. The Jews gathered themselves together in their cities throughout all the provinces of the king to lay hand on such as sought their hurt, and no man could withstand them. Speaking of the Jews, the fear of them fell upon all people. And the rulers of the provinces and the lieutenants and the deputies and officers of the king helped the Jews because the fear of Mordecai fell upon them. He's second in command. For Mordecai was great in the king's house, and his fame went out throughout all the provinces. For this man, Mordecai, waxed greater and greater. Now, verse 5, listen to this. Thus the Jews smote all their enemies with the stroke of the sword and slaughter and the destruction, and did what they would unto those that hated them. And in Shushan the palace, the Jews slew and destroyed 500 men. It goes on here, and there's a whole. You can read the whole chapter here, but we're not going to. The point is this, ladies and gentlemen: how do we save the Jews? How do governments save the? How do people save the Jews? Just like in the Bible, what they did: allow the Jews to be armed and allow them the right, the God-given right, the legal right to defend their lives, their children, their grandchildren, their properties from the enemies. That's what's got to be done. That's what's got to be done. That's why we have a Second Amendment. That's one reason we have a Second Amendment here in our country. But by the way, we're very restricted here now. There's certain states you got to be careful in. There's certain states don't allow you, and so that will solve crime. Now, what happened in Australia, it was tragic. Did you know that Australia has severe gun laws, and their answer to fighting what just happened? More gun laws. Gun laws are not the answer. Restricting guns from good, honest, law-abiding people is not the answer. That's the problem. The bad guys have guns. They don't care what the law is. And when the bad guys have guns and we don't, tragedy, like we're seeing all over the world. And we're seeing even right here in America. And you got to call 911. You got to wait 20 minutes for the cops to get there. And we always joke about it. The cops come with the chalk to draw an outline around your dead body. That's what they do. Because by the time they get there, it's over. It's over. You've got to be able to defend yourself. You can't be waiting on somebody from some station 10 miles down the road to get in his car and risk his life to save you. By the time he gets there, it's going to be over, most likely. So you see what I'm saying? God has the answer. How can we help the Jews save their lives? Mayors and governors and police departments and counties and sheriffs have got to get the Jews together in their communities, talk with them, give them some training if needed, gun training. They've got to be armed. Arm the Jews. By the way, in Israel, they have been doing this. There's some issues over there too, but they have been changing their laws. They have been trying to arm more people because they've realized that our people have got to be armed so that when something happens, they can defend themselves. It's a huge deterrent. Listen, when you go to rob somebody and you're breaking in their house, you know what the greatest fear you have? That the owner in that house may have a gun and I could be shot and killed. That's a huge deterrent. It's so simple, isn't it? That's how the Jews can be saved. That's what needs to be done. They've got to be armed, they've got to get some training, And I'm talking about outside of Israel. I'm talking about Australia. I'm talking about here in America. And now, how do we get that going? I think the Jews should try to initiate it and talk to their political leaders in their communities. But I think even more than that, I think the mayors and the governors, the sheriffs of our counties should find out where, who the Jews are in their communities, and contact them, and have a meeting with them, and make a plan to provide training and licensing if necessary. Uh, they've got to be armed. It would save a lot of lives. Okay. All right. Let's see what we got here. Anything? Let's see who's on here tonight. Not many. Well, there's a lot on here, but no comments. Just Minnesota's here, and everyone's quiet tonight. Now it's late, and I'll try to come on tomorrow night. Although I do have some sort of Christmas outing that my daughter is doing. We don't even know what it is. She told us to be available from 3 to 7 p.m. So we'll see. Maybe done sooner, maybe later. So I'll do my best to get on tomorrow night. I want to share some things about the wise man. I got a sermon I used to preach when I was a pastor called Three Wise Guys. And where I talked about some things about the wise men. And anyway, I may share some of that with you. And again, we don't know how many wise men there were. There were three gifts they brought: the gold, frankincense, and myrrh. But we that does not mean there were three wise men. Okay, and there was a whole caravan of people. There's no way they traveled from the east, most likely Babylon. There's no way they traveled from there to Jerusalem with just three or four guys. I mean, they'd have never made it. They'd have been robbed and left for dead. Okay, well, I hope you're having a great day, and we got a new week beginning here, and tomorrow's Monday, and we'll see what this week holds for us. It just seems like every week more and more things happening. It just seems like we're close to something big getting ready to happen. All right. I'll let Facebook go. There's nothing, no comments there. So God bless you on Facebook. Share this, hit the like button, get it to your friends. And you on YouTube, I'll double check one more time. There's no other comments yet. Got a good crowd on, but everybody's quiet tonight. Okay, I hope this was helpful to you. And the whole gun control issue in a nutshell, right there. Gun control is to control the honest man. Gun control means nothing to the criminal, the thief, the thug, the lawbreakers. They don't pay attention to laws. You cannot take the guns away from honest people and expect the community to be safe. And all right, and that's how you we save the Jews around the world. Another thing is, and this is biblical, the Jews are slowly, for several years now, been going back to Israel. Did you know that at this time, more than half the Jews in the entire world are living in Israel right now? And that number is going to grow extremely fast as time goes on. And okay. All right. On that note, we will let you go, and Lord willing, try to be here tomorrow. Okay. God bless, and keep your eyes on them skies.